But the way that I view it is like when you are getting into something like bodybuilding, you're investing a lot of time into this, you're investing a lot of money into this, you're investing a lot of your effort into this, right? Truthfully, like this is a very difficult thing to do. So I don't think it's one of those things that you should be like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So when you are investing all of this time, this effort into this, like it's something that should be done the right, right? And if you are just trying to like rush to the stage just to step on stage, you're not going to be very happy with the outcome of it. I promise you. Like if you are stepping on stage and you're 120 pounds soaking wet as a dude, you're going to get absolutely demolished and you are going to hate the way that your stage shots look. And that is not a good feeling.
Welcome back to the Fireside Physique podcast. I'm your host, Talon Westervelt, and today I get the pleasure of speaking with Dylan Hummel, who's the owner of DMH Physiques and is a phenomenal, well-rounded coach who takes mostly first-timers to stage and has done really, really well so far. He gives you the entire framework on what exactly this looks like, how to bring your best package yet, and how he prepares his athletes to bring amazing physiques. He talks about his origin story, about how he started in fitness coaching and what exactly led him to bringing this passion to others, his experience versus education, and which is more important, and how he intertwined them to be a phenomenal coach, how to be a role model for his clients, and how to just set the standard for everybody that works with him. The green light that he looks for, this is going to be the guide that he talks about on, in a perfect world, what you should be doing in your experience to bring that competitive package. Like I said, he's won multiple OCB pro cards. You could probably learn a thing or two from him. How stress and adrenal health is a really dominant topic in the industry today, and how his own experience with stress and adrenal health has affected him, and how it's made him more sympathetic to working with others, what this exactly looks like. Balancing gain and prep phases, and how dieting year-round is a super common mistake, what exactly he does and how he goes about fixing it, and talks about growth strategies to ensure that you're actually maximizing your muscle year to year, first-timer mistakes, the influence of social media, and then finally some super exciting future goals that he is setting out. Without further ado, let's hop into it. How did you start off in fitness coaching, and what led you to creating DMH Physiques?
Yeah, so I actually founded my company back in 2022, and this was after I underwent like a pretty significant transformation myself. Like, growing up, I was always super overweight. I think at my heaviest, I was pushing like 300 pounds, which is a lot of weight. It was a lot of weight to be carrying around. So I kind of started getting into fitness towards like the end of high school, and this is where I really started to take things more seriously because I had gone to just a regular checkup at my doctor's office, and my doctor told me at the age of like 17 years old that I had the blood pressure of an 80-year-old man and that I would die early if I did not get my shit together. So that scared the living shit out of me. So that was sort of like my turning point. That was my oh shit moment where it's like, okay, it's time for me to actually get in shape. So, I had no idea what I was doing, man. Not a single thing in the world, nowhere near what I know now. And I was just kind of like bootstrapping this thing and just trying to figure it out on my own, which, somehow I was able to. I definitely, looking back on things, I definitely did not do things the way I should have. And if I could go back and do it all over again, I probably would have approached things far differently than I did. I was your typical like protein snacks for 3 meals out of the day, eating probably 4 or 5 protein bars a day. It was quite ridiculous. But nonetheless, I ended up losing 100 pounds over the course of a couple of years. And it absolutely changed my life, right? Not just from like a physical component, but also just from a mental component. And that is when I was like, I need everybody to feel like this, right? I cannot believe people that are like walking around feeling the way that I felt, like every time you sit down on a couch, you got to put a pillow over your stomach to hide your gut, literally telling my friends that I cannot come over to their pool party just because I'm so terrified of telling people or explaining to people why I'm still wearing a hoodie and sweatpants when it is 95 degrees on a hot summer day. Like all of that stuff, man, like it just does not feel good. So I was like, I need to help as many people as possible kind of get out of the situation that they're in, that, I was in. So this is where in college, I started just helping some buddies for free. People kind of saw like, the transformation that I had, and I had a couple people reach out. And this was like before I even realized that this could be like a career path. This could be a job. And I was just coaching people for free. And I actually think I still have the notebook that I was keeping track of client data on. I would literally get on calls with clients, and I would just write down all their data in a notebook on like a weekly check-in call. It's so funny looking back at that. But yeah, I was just literally helping people just out of the genuine desire of wanting to help people. I wasn't charging people. I mean, probably the first 10, 15 people I coached, like I wasn't, they weren't paying me a dime. It was just out of like genuine desire to want to help these people. So that's sort of where, kind of that snowball effect, right? You get one person a result, and I just kind of like was talking about it, and word of mouth spread. And it's kind of like what my entire business model has been, strictly word of mouth. I mean, I don't do ads or anything like that. So just kind of spread. And then at some point I was like, hey, like I could actually like do something with this. Right. And it wasn't until like actually very recently, probably within like the last 2 years, where I realized like this could actually be like a business and a career path for me. So that's sort of where back in 2022 was when, I actually like founded my business. Still like had no idea like the back end business type of things. Truthfully, up until like 2 years ago, I knew nothing about business. Still, I feel like I know nothing about business. Still to this day, the thing that drives me is just getting people results and just helping people. So it's definitely been very fortunate, the fact that I'm in this position now, but it all kind of started with my own fitness journey, right? So that's sort of what got it started for me.
That's amazing. I love that, the authenticity of it and how you went about it. It's almost, I met you for the first time at the Gray Matter Academy Summit, I guess if we want to call it that. And that was what Dom Kuza really, really preached on, was just skills first. And that blend of
Yeah.
skill and just authenticity for what you just said of wanting to help people will kind of just take care of itself.
Yeah, that was the first thing I did. Actually, probably. So I went through a prep. This was like in the process of losing 100 pounds. I went through a contest prep, and I was actually working with Dom's assistant coach, Mike Nassif, because he was local to me here in Syracuse, New York, before he moved to Tampa. But I was working with him, and it's sort of when like my coach, like it's kind of when I started like really getting into coaching, and like it's like, hey, like I really want to take this seriously, because I was just like so fascinated with every single piece of it. And when I was working with Mike, I was like, wow, you know a lot more than I know. Like, I want to know what you know. So he was like, you need to link up with Dom Kuza. So I, with no money in my bank account, I was literally like borrowing money, and, any like the little change that I was making from coaching, I was somehow putting together $700 a month to pay Dom. And that's like sort of like what really did it for me. Like, I know this isn't a podcast about Dom Kuza, but like I truthfully like cannot speak highly enough about Dom. Like he's like kind of the one who has kind of like shaped me into like my abilities today. He's had probably like the biggest profound impact on me. So that is just kind of like another sidebar as far as sort of like what got me to this point now.
Yeah, you're not the first person to say that either. I love, I mean, I heard the legend of Dom Kuza because I worked with Tom Schuster for a really long time.
Yeah.
And he's a huge mentor to him as well. And it just seemed that name carried on, like any great coach I seem to meet since I've started this coaching journey. The tree, it's like a great tree linking back from Dom Kuza. Like they all seem to have wanted to work with them or have worked with them in some capacity.
There's a common denominator.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I got it whenever I met him for the first time in Dallas. Like when I met him, lived up to the hype. I guess I'll put it that way. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's definitely a really great role model, not just in like coaching and business, but I think in a lot of area of life, he shows up. So really good person to take a lot of stuff from. And when he speaks, he's a guy you should listen to.
Yeah, my ears are perked up. So you've spoken about balancing experience and just formal education in the coaching field. How do you integrate this scientific knowledge? Because I know we're moving away from the era of chicken and rice coaches, and there's a big skill base of you need to advance constantly inside of it, but also combining that with real world coaching knowledge.
Yeah. So, I really enjoy the science side of things. That's obviously a huge part of it. And I do think as a coach, you should be keeping up with things, especially because in a job like this, the landscape is forever changing, right? What we know today is probably going to be, there can be conflicting information to how we approach everything now and, a couple of years from now. So I do think it's really important that you keep up with, the science and all that stuff, and at least have like a general understanding of how a lot of these concepts work, especially when you're like working with people and perhaps utilizing certain things. But I think a lot of people get way too lost in it. I feel like that is where a lot of coaches kind of, there's a disconnect, right? And something that I see quite a bit is a lot of these like self-proclaimed science-based coaches and whatnot. They like to completely ignore anecdote, which I think is a huge mistake among coaches, right? Because there's a lot of things that, perhaps evidence states one thing, right? Science states one thing, but we see something completely done different when we're actually like applying these things in the real world, working with real people, right? Like we have to understand that like when we're coaching people, we're working with real human beings. We're not operating out of a petri dish, right? Like these are real people. They have real lives. People have kids. They have jobs, multiple jobs even. Like people have lives, right? And we have to take all of those things into consideration. I feel like that is where a lot of people tend to lose it, right? So I think the science part of things is, again, fantastic. And I do think that as a coach, you should understand or at least have like a baseline knowledge and be keeping up to date with all of these things. But anecdote, in my opinion, is sort of like where I literally like to reside, right? Because again, there's a lot of things that I might do in practice that maybe that's against the grain, right? Maybe that's completely opposite of what we see done in studies, but like I've seen that it works, right? And I feel like that is not something that could just be ignored. So it's important you understand it, but I don't feel like it's something that should always just be inherently taken at face value.
I'm sure a lot of this experience and knowledge that you've built comes from, the practical side of knowledge is great, but actual experience yourself, because Tom Schuster, whenever you hopped on a podcast with him, he described you as someone who really sets an example for athletes on your roster. What habits or standards do you model for your clients, and how do you hold your own self accountable to these higher standards?
Yeah, so it's funny that you bring that up because I struggle a lot with imposter syndrome and kind of like not living that necessarily. I don't want to say I don't live a bodybuilding lifestyle, because I do in a sense, but I had some, after I did a prep back in 2022, and after that, I had some health stuff going on, which I talked about on a few other podcasts, but it made me take a huge step back from bodybuilding, and I have not been able to bodybuild for the last 3 years in the capacity that I would like to. Trust me, I would love to be going to the gym 5 days a week, slinging around weights, playing around with drugs, doing all of this fun stuff, but like my body's not in a position to do any of that stuff. So I've had to take a really big step back from bodybuilding, which has been a blessing and a curse. And I think that the curse of it is that I feel like an imposter, right? I work primarily with bodybuilders, right? That's sort of the main group of clientele that I coach. I coach people from like all different demographics, but that's sort of like my main niche, I would say. So at first it felt very weird coaching these people and telling these people and like guiding these people through a process that like I currently am not able to live to its full extent, right? I do think it's really important that as a coach that, you're walking the walk, you're talking the talk. So it's been at first it was very weird, again, being a coach that coaches bodybuilders and not being able to like fully bodybuild. But I feel like I sort of like demonstrate that standard in a different extent, right? Because although I am physically and physiologically unable to bodybuild at 100%, I am still like working towards my health goal. Like that is every single day I'm waking up and I am doing everything I possibly can to get myself back to 100% health so I can get back to bodybuilding, right? So although I am not slinging around weights in the gym, like my training has been like 2 to 3 RIR. I'm only training 3 days per week right now. That is all. Like I have a coach myself. So that's where like my accountability comes in. I think, as a coach, we work with a lot of people, right? And we just don't want to, it can be very difficult to have to worry about your own fitness goals, your own standards. So I think that's why even coaches benefit from coaches. But he's who holds me accountable. But, he's got me capped at 3 days per week right now while I'm going through a GI protocol right now. So although I can't bodybuild to 100%, like I'm kind of still living the lifestyle, right? I'm still eating my meals. I'm still hitting my 7,000 steps per day, which is what I have set at. And I'm still like doing all the stuff that I need to be doing so that I can get back to that, right? So although it's not like the way that I would personally right now would love to be showing up and kind of like setting the standard, this is how it has to be for me right now. So I think in a different way, that's sort of where I am kind of leading from the front, so to speak.
I think you said it's sort of imposter syndrome, but that sounds more difficult than actually going to the gym 5 days a week or slinging around weight, doing what you really want to do, like taking a step back from that, quote unquote, when you have to be modeled for other people, to take your own health serious. And you said a really good bit there about how all coaches you think should probably have coaches, because you probably wouldn't go about the route of capping it at 7,000 steps or maybe keeping it at 2 to 3 hours, actually taking your health in more like heavy consideration if you didn't have somebody leaning over you telling you to do that.
Yeah,
or be harder to.
Yeah, he's got to reel me in quite a bit. Sometimes I like to get a little bit too carried away with myself, and I pay the price for it every single time. So he's like, "Listen, dude, you just got to pull back." And it's tough, man. Like you take a bodybuilder and tell him like, "Hey, you're going to go from training 5 days per week, balls to the wall every single session, to 3 days per week, and you got to leave reps in the tank." Like it's a tough thing to do, man. It's definitely really, really tough. But we're getting through it, and like I'm just, at least at the end of the day, I'm thankful that I can still do it to this capacity, right? Because there's a lot of people that can't even do this. So the fact that I'm still able to show up, and again, I'm getting closer every single day. I'm putting in my inputs. Eventually, that'll get me to the point where I can get back to bodybuilding at 100%, which I'm yearning for the day. It's coming, but for right now, it's just a matter of putting in my inputs and doing what I got to do to get back to that point.
That compounded effort that maybe comes in different forms than people expect sometimes, like having to take steps back so you can take leaps forward at times.
Yeah. One step backwards to take 2 steps forward, right?
Yeah. So a lot of what you've done currently, what I've seen is you've taken first-time competitors to stage and you've done really, really well with it inside of it. So I'd love to hear your input on what exactly the green light looks like for you? Like if you had it perfectly laid out and were able to control all the details, what somebody's able to look like or something to do a guide wise before they enter a prep, like what does that look like to you in a perfect world?
Yeah, in a perfect world, which unfortunately this seems to happen far less than I would really like it to. But I would like to have at least 6 months working with somebody before I even consider getting into a prep with them, right? And it's not just about the physique, like, yes, that is a huge part of it. Like, we want to get somebody to a good position to actually start a prep, right? But for me, what I think is something for me personally that I am really, really diligent about is trying to like understand my athletes, right? And develop a relationship with them before we actually get into a prep, right? Because like I want to know like what makes you tick. I want to know like what stresses you out, right? Because when we get into this stressful environment, if shit hits the fan, right, I want to know like how I need to guide you through that. And if we're just trying to bootstrap this thing when you sign up with me and you're 8 weeks out from the show, like it's much difficult to do that. So I do like to have that time before prep to get somebody in a good position physically. Yes, that's the important part of it, but also just kind of like understand you as an athlete, how I need to coach you, right? Like I don't have two athletes that I coach the same way. Everybody needs something different from me. And how I approach one thing with one athlete might be a completely different way that I approach things with another athlete, as far as like how I need to speak with you, how we need to sort of like navigate certain situations, right? Everybody's a little bit different in that regard. And I've sort of always thought that, but I ran into a situation last year with an athlete, a men's physique athlete of mine. And this is where like I really had like a come to earth moment where I was like, this is why having a relationship and developing trust with an athlete is so incredibly important. So I had an athlete 13 days out from his show. He shoots me a text in the morning. He was like, hey dude, my body's on fire. He's like, head to toe. Like I feel like I'm covered in fire. And I'm like, that is really weird. So the first place that my mind goes like, okay, you're having an allergic reaction. Go get your hand on some Benadryl and pop a Benadryl. Goes, takes a Benadryl, nothing happens. So we kind of ride it out through the day. I pulled his training from the day, pulled his cardio from the day. And then the next day he wakes up and he's like, hey dude, my body's still on fire, but today it feels worse. So I'm like, okay, you need to go to like an urgent care. He goes to the urgent care. He has the fucking flu. He's 13 days out. He has the flu. And not only does he have the flu, but he also has an ear infection. So, which is very common when you get the flu to also get an ear infection, but like just double whammy there. I feel like in 99.9% of cases, an athlete gets the flu at 13 days out, 12 days out at this point. The show is a no-go, right? We got to pull out of the show because we got to take into consideration the inflammation that's going to come from being sick. Plus, the flu is a nasty thing to kick, right? It's not like an overnight little cold thing where we can kind of thug it out. Like he was not feeling good. And to be honest with you, when he first told me this, I was stressing. Like I was stressing hard. This is the first time I've ever had an athlete get the flu at 13 days out. But I was like, we're going to figure this out. Okay. He had such good potential. And I was like, we had such a good prep and I would hate to waste it here. So I wanted to like give it a little bit of time before I said, okay, we need to pull the plug on this. So this is where that trust really came into play, right? Because I was just like, I just need you to listen to what I'm telling you. Okay. Because if an athlete puts in a situation, anybody tells you get the flu at 12, 13 days out, of course you are going to be stressed, right? But I was just like, listen, dude, I need you to trust me, right? Do everything I'm telling you. And like, we're going to figure this out. So of course, you never go into peak week with like an exact layout of what you're going to do, but you kind of have an idea of what you're going to do based off of like feedback from an athlete inside of 4 weeks out. So at that point, I already had peak week laid out. I was like, okay, this is the day that we're going to do this. This is when, we're going to load you. Like I had everything kind of like planned out as like how I think things are going to go just based off of things that we've tried in the past. And of course, like you get the flu. Now we have an entire other variable. Sure enough, so they put him on Tamiflu to help with the flu, obviously, but then they also put him on amoxicillin for the ear infection. And so of course, as soon as he started taking the amoxicillin, he started to run into like poor gastric motility. So just super constipated. And just because of like the inflammation that his body was trying to fight off the flu, he just turned into like this big ball of water. And I'm like, God, dude, like I don't even know how we're going to salvage this. But I was like, legally, I cannot tell you to not take the amoxicillin anymore because he had an ear infection, but like he was like, it doesn't really bother me at all. So I was like, hypothetically, if you wanted to stop taking that, I'm not going to tell you no. So he was like, okay, I don't even want to take it, so I'm going to stop taking it. So he stopped taking it, which helped things out a little bit, but he was still super inflamed, still was holding on to a ton of water. So again, my original approach going to peak week was kind of had to like spin it on its head, just kind of like on a dime. We were literally taking things day by day. Typically, like I don't start checking in day to day with an athlete. Well, depends. Typically, it's inside of 2 weeks out. But for him, I wasn't planning to start it until peak week. But at this point, I was like, dude, I need to see you every single day, and we are just going to like literally take this day by day, and I'm going to be making judgment calls based on kind of like hour to hour, right? We were in conversation. We probably sent like 10,000 messages back and forth over the span of 10 days. Like it was pretty insane how much we were communicating. But we were just taking it day by day, man. And again, my original approach, we had to completely spin it on its head. And my big goal was just like, I just need to get this water because he was ready. Like I would have put him on stage that if, it was time, but it just wasn't. So I was like, we just need to get this water off of you. So I completely changed what I was doing with sodium, water, potassium. I was having him do some like Epsom salt bath, just trying to get this water off of him. And by the grace of God, we somehow like pulled it together. He still kind of like felt, he felt like he just got over the flu on show day, but he ended up winning his pro card, which was in a show. There was like 40 men's physique guys, and he got his pro card after just getting over the flu, which was an absolute insane story. And I say that here just because like he trusted me, right? And we had a really good relationship built going to that point. Because I think in any case, like an athlete's going to be stressing out, right? Because they just got the flu and they're going to have a really hard time recovering just from like not just like the flu, but also the stress of realizing like, holy shit, I've been in prep for the last 4, 5, 6 months. I basically just threw all of this away because, I unfortunately got sick, but we figured it out. And somehow by the grace of God, we pulled that together. I don't know if I could ever pull that off again, the way that we did. And I do want to say that I think I could, I think I might just be the first coach in history to peak an athlete who has Tamiflu in their peak week protocol. So I think I'm going to give myself that one.
Yeah, Michael Jordan protocol in a way.
Yeah.
That's huge. The first thing what really came to mind through all of that is because you took the time to build trust. Whenever you said that sentence to him, you're like, hey, pause, just trust me. I bet that took like just a huge weight off his shoulders because he did trust you. Like that's authentic. Like you can't really fake that, and you definitely can't do it if you shotgun prep somebody's. To take all the stresses that he had and just kind of like almost absorb it in a way, be like, hey, trust me, we got this. And that's amazing. That's such a cool story. I love that.
Yeah. It was thankfully like he's relatively low stress anyway, but of course, like even if you are low stress, like getting the flu 13 days out, like there's going to be stress that comes with it. You're just going to have a lot of things running through your head. But honestly, like I didn't even know if we were going to be able to pull this together. I was like, just trust me for now. Just trust me for now until I say like, hey, we're pulling out of this thing. Like we're planning for this thing. Things worked out, which I'm grateful for. It is a very cool story though.
Dude was nails to be able to take on all of that. Peaking, that's awesome. What an athlete. Also, I mean, testimony to your coaching, but that's awesome for him.
Yeah, no, he's a rock star athlete.
To kind of segue into this stress adrenal talk, on a podcast, you shared your experiences overcoming stress and adrenal issues and discuss signs that athletes should watch out for because it's so prevalent in today's society, the hustle culture, the stimulant abuse, and just that kind of the combination of everything. How do those challenges shape your coaching, and what practical stress management strategies do you teach your clients or to come up kind of often?
Yeah, so going through like my own health stuff with all like started out as adrenal issues after my prep, which then evolved to the gut issues that I have now. And I think that not having gone through, because I said earlier that, it was kind of a blessing and a curse that all of this stuff happened. Of course, it sucks having to go through all this stuff and taking a step back and whatnot. It's difficult to do. But I will say the blessing side of it was that now I've lived that, right? So when I'm working with athletes that are on the more functional side of things and they're dealing with these issues, I can literally say like, hey, I've been in your shoes and I'm like walking the walk right now, especially. So it just kind of helps me sympathize with that crowd a little bit more because I know what it feels to feel at the mercy of your body, where I feel like a lot of coaches aren't really sympathetic to that, right? Just kind of like a thug it out type of thing where it's like, it's not like that, right? Because it's like, yes, you have all these things that are going on, but what that does also from when your body is like that broken, right? There is going to be a significant mental piece to that as well. So like I have physically lived that. I am currently living that. So I understand that. I can kind of put myself in their shoes, which makes it very easy for me to sympathize with them and like actually like understand where they're coming from. And when they're struggling with things, like I can like actually relate to it. So it kind of like allows me to do my job better and actually coach them through this process because I've lived it. And again, like having to take such a huge step back from bodybuilding, it also kind of allowed me to focus on my business a little bit. So like I think it's important that when you are going through like a health case or whatever it is that it might be, focusing on other areas of your life, right? Because for me personally, like the gym was kind of everything to me, right? But when I no longer had that, that's sort of where I had like a really big, like, oh shit moment. It was like, man, I don't have this and I'm like crumbling because I can no longer do the thing that I'm super passionate about. So that is where, like, when we're talking about like the stress management techniques, one of the things that I tell all of my athletes, especially my bodybuilders, because everybody now, like the gym has gotten very popular and of course it's a great like stress outlet, but what happens when you don't have that, right? For a lot of people, for a lot of my bodybuilders, like the gym is all that they have. Like that's all that they look forward to, right? They go to work, they go to school, like whatever, and then it's the gym, right? That's the best part of their day. But what happens in the case where you need to take a step back from that, right? And that was a situation that I found myself in because when I had to take a step back, I didn't have that. I didn't have something else that I enjoyed, which was a problem because when I had to take a step back from that, then I felt like I had nothing. I was like, man, what do I do with this time? Which kind of like suppressed me and kind of like put me in a deeper hole from a mental perspective. So that is where, from like a stress management perspective, I tell everybody, my bodybuilders, my lifestyle clients, my functional health people, you need to have something outside of the gym that you are passionate about, that you are working towards, that you have like some type of like purpose outside of the gym, right? Because if the gym is your everything, what happens when you don't have that, right? So I think it's important that you do have a hobby outside of bodybuilding. And it's like, I feel like a hobby should be something that's like pretty low maintenance, not something that contributes to any stress. That's kind of the entire purpose of having it, is to, kind of like disconnect from all the things that you have going in life, something that you can resort to in times of stress. And what that is, it's going to look different for everybody, right? It doesn't have to be, anything massive. It could be something as simple as like, I like playing chess, like that's my hobby that I like to do. I play chess, or fidgeting around with the Rubik's Cube. Like it could be something like so simple. Like it doesn't have to be like this big thing that people make it out to be. I had an athlete the other day who I told him, I was like, dude, you need something outside of the gym. Like do not check in with me until you find a hobby and something that you enjoy doing outside of the gym. And he bought a keyboard, like a keyboard. And now he's like, dude, I love this. And it's like, because he's just so stressed out outside of the gym and stuff. And I was like, you need to find a hobby. And he started playing the keyboard. And he was like, I love this. He was like, if you don't have a keyboard, he's like, I want you to get a keyboard. So it's just like, I think it's really important that you have something outside of the gym. And what that is for, it's going to look different for everybody. But I do think that it's really important that, and having a purpose too, like especially just kind of like speaking more directly to men, I feel like it's really important that we have a purpose, even outside of like the gym training, all of that, that we have something. I don't know. I feel like I see this more commonly with men, is like, when we do not have a purpose or something that we are like constantly working towards, that is where we start to find ourselves like getting into a little bit of a trouble, right? That's where we kind of start to notice like the low motivation and just kind of like, just kind of like lower mood. So I do think that it's important that we have a purpose, that we have something that we are working towards. So those are like the big things as far as like stress management for me personally, but there's a lot of other things too. Like setting boundaries, I think is a huge one, something that I need to be better about myself. And I think everybody, to be honest with you, like for me, like I need to be better about setting boundaries with work, right? I can tend to be a workaholic, and I find myself in 2-3 o'clock in the morning and I'm still doing whatever, right? I'm sure that you even find yourself in situations like this too. So I think it's really important that you set boundaries, not only for yourself, but for other people too. Like it's okay to say no. You don't have to say yes to everything. Somebody wants you to go do something that you want to do. Like you don't got to be a yes man, right? And if it hurts people's feelings, okay, so fucking what? Like, what does it matter? Like, it's important that you have that ability to say no, right? Turn down things that either are going to be detrimental to you, or honestly just things that you don't want to do. Like if you want to sit home one night and sit on the fucking couch and watch Netflix because you don't want to go out to the bar with your friends, okay, do that, right? Nobody is stopping you from doing that. You got to protect your own peace at the end of the day. So I think setting boundaries is a huge stress management technique that is often overlooked, right? I think that's just a huge thing. But then we have some like basic stress management tools, like journaling can be great for people that sort of have like a very wired mind, especially before bed. Just kind of like doing like a brain dump and just like putting all of those thoughts bouncing around your head onto paper could be great. Meditation, something that I'm trying to get a little bit more into to start your day, and just kind of like start your day with a clear head, and just kind of like be a little bit more in tune with yourself, and in times of stress, be able to like kind of like recenter yourself, and box breathing. Like there's a bunch of like different little stress management techniques that you can do. But the big things for me, and that I find myself applying the most, is having a hobby, finding a purpose and saying no and setting boundaries for yourself. Those are huge.
And it gets so tough, especially when you start working with people like parents and stuff, when
Mhm.
going back to talk about having hobbies and doing stuff outside of it, because everything they're working with you obviously to get in control of their health. But on top of that, their whole deal is work, relationship, probably their
Yeah.
kids, squeezing in the time for the gym. And then there's nothing for themselves at all. I find that a really common problem, especially when I work with moms specifically.
Oh
Like
yeah.
moms have a really hard time. I'm like, you don't take any time at all to walk or just disconnect, and it shows. Like, it's showing on your metrics, it's showing inside of here. I have a workaholic mom who, whenever I told her to do her, she got stripped of all of her cardio, and her cardio became just outside walks. And I was like, and inside of these outside walks, don't bring your phone. Like, no stimulus, no health podcasts, no nothing. Like that could be your hobby if you want it to be, but you need to just like learn to disconnect, like to take a step back.
That feels too familiar. My coach did the same thing. He was like, when you go on walks, no phone, no working, because that's what I'll do. That I'll go on walks and I'll be replying to clients on WhatsApp because I don't want to waste time. But it is really important to protect your peace and also have time for yourself. So something as little as that, I'll even tell clients sometimes that are like just like super stressed all the time, is like, try to just like find silence where you can. Even if you're like going on a drive somewhere, like you're driving into work in the morning, don't put any music on the car, don't put on a podcast. I just sit there in silence. Just like, actually, it's crazy too, because a mutual of ours, Hayden, he actually told me that he kind of is the one that kind of gave me that idea. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to try that. So there was one time where I had like a 3 hour long car drive, and I listened to no music the entire time, no podcast, which was very new to me. And I just kind of like sat there with my own thoughts, and I was like, wow, this is really hard. Like, this is weird. Like, I'm actually like thinking, and like kind of like I'm just like slowing down and just kind of like recognizing like what's going on in my brain. And it felt very foreign, but it was kind of like euphoric in a really weird way to just kind of like listen to myself and just kind of like be in tune with myself for a second. So I think that's another really, really great like stress management tactic, is just like find silence where you can, because we're so stimulated all the time, man. We
Mm.
constantly have YouTube on in the background. We constantly have music playing. There's always like background noise. Like, we're always thinking about stuff, and it's just really hard to get away from all of those things. And honestly, it's a lot of just like cheap dopamine, to be honest with you. So it's like trying to find ways. Like, a big thing for me is, or at least has been, that I've been trying to do, is like, when I'm working, I'm working, and when I'm not working, I'm not working. That's something I have a really hard time with, is like disconnecting from that work piece. So really, just again, it's a boundary, right? It's a boundary that I have to uphold for myself. So that's another big thing too. Like, when you work, you work. When you're not working, you're not working. I'm just kind of, again, protect that piece a little bit and kind of give yourself some time to just sit with yourself.
Yeah. 3 hour drive. That's a crazy first experiment. I would say like 5 to 10 minutes, like if you can find it, but 3 hours first time, that's very impressive.
Trial by fire.
To kind of go back to your competitors and education you have there, a lot of people spend so much time dieting, and to kind of connect it with stress, that's a stressor in itself, and people don't realize that dieting and everything else, being on edge, never finding time for silence, this all goes into one bucket. But when it comes to particular for diet stress, it shows up a lot. How do you structure a client's year to maximize muscle growth, hormonal health, and just longevity while still preparing to get them ready for that stage, kind of give them that green light?
Yeah, so I actually made a reel about this the other day, because I literally had 3 consultation calls within that week, and all of them were the same thing, where they were guys that have been dieting for like 12 plus months, and I'm like, holy shit, like, what are you doing? And the crazy thing is, they're all like super, super, super lean. Like, they probably could have started growing 6 months ago. And I think that people just get really attached to like that lean look, and they have a really hard time detaching from that, or like letting go of that. And if you want to grow, the reality is you have to be spending more time growing than you are dieting. If you're dieting for more than 6 months out of the year, less than half of that time is going to be time that you can spend growing, which is not a good thing. If your goal is to put on muscle tissue, which, let's be real, we all need to put on muscle tissue. So if you're spending the bulk of your time dieting, you're not going to be able to do this. So the way that I like to approach things with athletes is like, depends on like where they're coming to me, right? If they are somebody who is already super lean, which is like always like nice, because then we can just like jump right into either a reverse diet into a growth phase, or if they're already in a good spot, we can just jump right into a growth phase. That's always really nice, right? But if somebody comes to me and they perhaps have a little bit of body fat to lose, maybe they don't have like any visible abs or something like that yet, I need to get them there, right? I need to get them to the point where they are lean enough to that where we can actually start a proper reverse diet into a growth phase. Because once you do get like really lean for the first time, from there, growing becomes really, really easy, right? Because once you are in that lean position, like your body's going to be primed to grow, right? Not only do you have a really, really long runway for progression, assuming that you keep things in check, but your body's also going to be really responsive to the food that we are feeding you. So I like to get athletes to that point where they are lean, and then literally spend as long as we can grow as possible until we start to noticing like diminishing feedback, right? We start to notice like maybe your pumps in the gym are getting a little bit weak. Maybe we're noticing like sleep take a hit. Maybe body composition is getting a little bit too soft for our liking. Then, okay, at that point, maybe we need to like reset, jump into a little bit of a mini cut, and then we're back to growing, right? And the way that I look at things is like when you do a growth phase the right way, you should be able to spend at least 8 months growing without needing a diet, without needing to do any type of deficit, to be honest with you. Because again, if you're spending more time of the year dieting, you're not going to be growing. So once you get to that point where you're lean enough, that rest of that time needs to be spent growing. And then when you do need to have like a diet break or not a diet break, mini cut, or even like a little short fat loss phase, basically a mini cut, they shouldn't be long, right? They shouldn't be things that we're dragging out for 6, 7, 8 months, because when you grow correctly, things really shouldn't get that far out of hand, right? And the way that I always look at things is like when I'm doing like my guys' growth phase is like at any point in time, I should be able to throw you into a fat loss phase, into a deficit, and I should be able to get you like pretty close to stage shape within 10 weeks, right? That is the way that I like to look at things. So mini cuts should be like short, they should be quick. And when you're coming from a point of eating a lot of food, you can get really aggressive from it. And that's sort of how I like to approach things, so that we can get back to, again, the goal with those mini cuts is like, I don't want you to be sitting here for long. I want to get to where we need to get to, where we can continue growing and grow for a long period of time. So that's sort of our goal with this continued cycle. And then throughout that process, obviously keeping tabs on biofeedback, taking a look at labs throughout the process. Especially with like, when you bodybuild and you're somebody that is just going through like these cycles, right, of pushing food, of like hard dieting, like our bodies aren't really like meant to do that. So like, your body will take a certain hit at certain points in time. So I do think it's really important that even as like natural athletes, that you're getting labs done either between phases or at least like 1 to 2 times per year, just to take a look and just make sure that everything is going smooth, right? Because like you could be growing, but like could we potentially be growing better, right? So I'm a big proponent of just keeping tabs on biofeedback, keeping tabs on labs. And then that's sort of how I like to set things up. And, when it comes time to prep, again, assuming that I have the time with an athlete, I like to prepare them to actually do that prep, right? I don't like starting a prep necessarily like coming from like peak growth phase. I like to give around like 4 weeks, I would say, depending on like what our time frame is that we're working with. I like to give 4 weeks to just kind of like allow our body to like sit there, right? Kind of sit there, maybe drop a little bit of like that like peak body weight fluff that we're having, just to like kind of prime us for when we do actually start that aggressive deficit. So that's generally how I like to go about approaching things. But yeah, way too many people are spending way too long dieting. If you want to put on size, you need to be spending the majority of your time growing. That's just how it is.
And you touched on it a little bit there. I really like that you talked about how you shouldn't be spilled over, because I think when people do get into the mindset of, okay, I want to grow, and they go into, quote unquote bulking phases, you see them do it terribly. Like their adherence, I guess, and how serious they take it is much different from their mindset whenever they're cutting. Like whenever they're going into a bulk, they're like, I'm going to have multiple free meals a week. I'm going to be 1,500 calories over what I really need to be for the sake of growing. And you said it right there. It just makes it harder. Like you're just making it tougher on yourself, because you want to grow, but you don't want to be far from being able to just go the opposite way if need be.
Yeah, if things are getting too far out of hands, like think about it like this, like the people that are doing that, like the people that are like really fucking off in their growth phases, like those are the people that are like constantly like bulking and cutting down to the same exact physique over and over again. Because the reality is, again, if you're needing to do a mini cut deficit, whatever, every 3, 4, 5, 6 months, the amount of tissue that you can put in that time frame like really isn't all that significant, especially for natural athletes, right? Kind of talking specifically to those guys, like you're not going to put on a significant amount of tissue in that time frame. So this is where if you're constantly stuck in that like bulking and cutting cycle every couple of months, like you're not making any real progress with your physique. And we kind of see the same thing with training, right? Like if you're progressing your training like way too quick, right? see this with guys all the time. They're obsessed with adding those 25-pound plates. They're obsessed with the 45-pound plates. They like those big jumps, right? And it's like, sure, maybe you can move that load, but if you are constantly doing that, what's going to happen is your form is going to start to go to shit. Your execution start to go to shit. Your joints are probably going to start to take a hit. And then what do you have to do? You have to drop weight to reset your form, right? And then what happens? Now you're right back at square one, right? So the goal here is to be constantly moving forward, right? We don't want to be stuck in this perpetual loop of making really quick progress, which isn't progress in all reality, and then basically going right back to where we started. We see that in training. We see that on the physique side of things, where we just need to make like small gradual improvements over time so that we can spend a longer time doing these things and continuing to move in the right direction. Otherwise, we're going to keep taking a step backwards, which if you're not growing, like you're not making progress.
When it comes to first timer mistakes, you see that's a really common pattern, but are there any other really common mistakes you see in first time physique competitors, whether it be training, nutrition, mindset, and do you have any way that you correct them early? Like stuff you see so much that you kind of got it down now to just nip it in the bud?
Yeah. So I would say like the biggest thing that I see is just guys that are rushing to the stage, right? Competing has gotten very popular. Everybody and their mother wants to step on stage nowadays, which is a great thing, right? I think that the sport of bodybuilding in the last couple of years, I've seen it explode, which I love. I love that the sport is gaining a lot of traction, but that's like a devil and a curse, right? You have guys who are like just now sort of like getting into the scene. Maybe they were following like Chris Bumstead on Instagram or whatever, watching guys on TikTok, and they've only been training for 6 months to a year seriously. And I say seriously very lightly, but they're actually like starting to take the gym a little bit more seriously, and they just want to jump on stage, right? I think especially for first timers looking to step on stage, like this is just like my personal views on this, but like I feel like bodybuilding isn't one of those things that you should just half-ass. Like, yeah, there's definitely an argument where for some people it's just like a check the box, like this is a bucket list type of thing. Like there's always going to be those people. But the way that I view it is like when you are getting into something like bodybuilding, you're investing a lot of time into this, you're investing a lot of money into this, you're investing a lot of your effort into this, right? Truthfully, like this is a very difficult thing to do. So I don't think it's one of those things that you should be like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So when you are investing all of this time, this effort into this, like it's something that should be done the right. And if you were just trying to like rush to the stage just to step on stage, you're not going to be very happy with the outcome of it. I promise you. Like if you are stepping on stage and you're 120 pounds soaking wet as a dude, you're going to get absolutely demolished, and you are going to hate the way that your stage shots look. And that is not a good feeling. Anybody who has compete before and they look at their stage shots and they do not like their stage shots will tell you that the last thing in the world that you want is to go through this entire process and not like those stage shots and not be proud or happy with the outcome that you got, right? So when you're putting all of your time and effort into this, like just take the time to not just rush to the stage just so that you can say that you can compete and check that box. Take your time, put on tissue to the point where like you're at least going to be competitive. I'm not saying that you need to take years and years and years to put on as much size as possible to the point where you're going to walk away with an overall in every show that you step into. Like that is not the point here, but we do want to have enough tissue to the point where you're actually going to be competitive, right? Because I feel like in a sport like this, again, the way that I view it is like it's a competition, right? And you want to go into it and you want to actually be competitive. In order to do that, you need the size to actually do that, right? And I'll have a lot of guys who come to me and they're like, hey, I want to step on stage in the next 6 months. And I'm like, you're not doing that under me. You can go somewhere else. You're not doing that under me. You need to take more time to grow. And it's like, it could be a tough pill to swallow because I understand like the excitement and the hype around it. But like, as much as it sucks to wait because we all want things instantaneously, like honestly, like if I could do my first prep over again, I would have waited. I would have given myself more time to grow, to be honest with you. So maybe that's where this is like surfacing from. But you're just going to be so much more thankful when you do take the time to grow and actually like, put yourself in a good position to be successful in bodybuilding. And I think that taking the time to actually do so, it makes the end result that much more sweet, right? And another thing too, I've kind of talked about not rushing to the stage, but there's two sides of this. Like, yes, we don't want to rush to the stage, but there also has to be a point in time where like we have to recognize when it's also time to pull the trigger, right? I see guys who, I've had guys who come to me and they have great physiques. And I was like, we could prep for a show. We can start prep tomorrow and put you on stage in 6 months, right? But a lot of times people like, again, you have people that want to rush to the stage, but you also have people who like, I just need more size. I need to constantly be putting on more size. But like at some point, you do have to rip that Band-Aid off because again, if you are investing all of this time, this money, this effort into the sport, you want to know if you actually enjoy it, right? Because a lot of people, they just like going to the gym. Maybe they don't like the actual like bodybuilding competition aspect of things. Like, and not everybody needs to, right? I feel like a lot of people that get into the gym they almost kind of like feel a pull and like almost kind of like a need to compete. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like you can just go to the gym and just do that for yourself, right? Not everybody needs to go to the gym and have the end goal of stepping on stage. Like that's great. If that is the goal for you, like fantastic. Like that's why I have a job, to be honest with you. But in that same sentence, also like at some point, like you have to just understand like when it's time to actually like pull that trigger. If it is something that you're wanting to do, right? Because again, you kind of got to figure out if you actually like this thing, if you're going to continue to pour all of this time and this effort into it. So there's two sides to it, but that is like the biggest things that I see with first timers is not, like understanding when it's time to actually pull the trigger, but also like not rushing to the stage. Kind of two sides to it. And it really just depends on it's a lot of mentality as far as different athletes go.
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, I think it's cool that it's blown up so much, but I have to agree in multiple fashions as far as, I don't know, it's become a beast in itself. It's constantly revolutionizing, and social media has a huge part to play in it. I wish I would have started coaching years ago before the social media animal really took off, and I'm grateful for it, but it has definitely influenced it in, I don't want to say in negative ways, but it's kind of hard to put a title to it in a way.
Yeah, I think there's definitely positive and negative to the social media side of things. I think, it does for a lot of people kind of create like expectations, right? And you see all these like freaks on social media, and you almost kind of feel like when you don't look like those people, that is just seems so unattainable, right? I think that's the big thing is like social media just makes everything seem really, really unattainable when you see all these people. And it's like, there's no way, like even from like a genetic standpoint, like there's no way I will ever look like this guy, this girl, whatever. So social media is a great thing. I think that it obviously spreads. I think that's part of the reason why bodybuilding is as big as it is. But at the same time, it's like, it does create, it's a devil and a curse, right? It just creates a lot of unrealistic expectations for athletes. And athletes playing comparison. I mean, I'm guilty of this myself. Is like, when you're down to the last couple of weeks of prep, and you're getting close to show day, and you're sitting there on Instagram trying to find all the athletes that are also competing at your show. Like it could be a really tough mental game. And it's something that I try to like, remind athletes like, dude, if you can stay off of social media these last couple of weeks, like do it. Like do not, and I'll tell people that I was like, do not go and like try to search up your competitors, because you're just going to get in your head. You're going to create a whole lot of stress for yourself. And honestly, like you do not know, and you can see somebody on social media and think like, man, this guy's going to blow me out of the water. And then you get to, show day, and it's a completely different outcome, right? And I've even had moments where I'm like backstage with an athlete, I'm looking around at the other guys, and I'm like, holy shit, like this guy, like we're in trouble here today. And then my athletes blow them out of the water. And it's like, because you don't know what people are going to look like up on that stage, right? A lot of things can change. The last day leading up to the show, you don't know what somebody's posing looks like. Things could be completely different up on stage. So that's the only look that matters at the end of the day. I think just social media, it's a great thing, but it could also be a harmful thing too.
It's also shortened the fuse for people pulling the trigger on gear, and it's made it so normalized. You see all these crazy physiques, and everybody's like, okay, I've been training for a year, I've been training for 12 months, it's time to do the whole protocol, like time to hop on all of them.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah, that's a big one for sure. Definitely has gotten a little bit too normalized, to be honest. Like there's a lot of people that have no business touching that stuff yet. You're absolutely right.
So before I kind of bring it all together, I've asked you a lot of questions at all. Is there any messages you want to kind of convey, any experiences you've really wanted to talk about, anything that I haven't touched on at all that I just wanted to bring to you?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know. Do you want me to take this in the lens of like a coaching perspective, like an athlete perspective?
Whatever you want, brother.
Let's take this in a coaching lens. Because it's funny because I've actually had like a couple of athletes this week reach out to me and say like, hey, like I've loved working with you so much that like I kind of want to like pursue this, and there are people where it's like it actually makes sense for them to do this. I'll very quickly tell somebody like, hey, like you are not meant for this, because I think you got to be like a special type of person to like actually want to work with people. And I think coaching has been one of those things that, especially now on social media, it's kind of gotten glorified with coaches that are working on a beach and they're like posting their 50K months that they're hitting, which, like that's not in reality, like that is not what this looks like when you do this the right way behind the scenes. Like there's a lot of hours that get put into this. There's a lot of hardship that gets put into this. There's a lot of care behind it, right? And that's the big thing. It's like, if you're going to get into coaching, you have to actually like want to do this for the sake of helping people and not for the sense of just making a quick buck. If that is your goal getting into this, you are going to fizzle out very, very quickly. And you're you're going to crash and burn. Like you have to have a genuine passion for this, because first thing, like if you are coaching clients and you do not have a passion for what you're doing, people are going to sniff that out. And sure, you might be able to get people initially, but your name is going to spread like a wildfire, and you're going to get a rap for being that coach that nobody wants to work with, right? So that's the big thing. And then for like new coaches that are trying to break into the coaching space, the best piece of advice that I could give to somebody is invest in your education, right? That's the biggest thing. And I feel like there's a pretty big knowledge gap in the coaching space nowadays, kind of what you were talking about when we first jumped on this call. Chicken and rice coaches, right? That's kind of all they can do. And I feel like those coaches that literally all that they are able to do is, well, here's your macros and here's like this AI training program that I just created for you on ChatGPT. Like the coaches that are just doing that stuff and that's all that they're able to do, those are the coaches that are going to get left in the dust. And those are the coaches that are going to get replaced by AI. That's sort of been like a big talk in the coaching space, is people worrying about they're losing their job to AI. But truthfully, like the coaches that are doing this and doing this for real, there's no replacing that, right? There's no replacing that human touch that the coaches that are actually doing this have. So if you're a coach, you're looking to get into this space, invest in your education, improve your skill set as a coach, and listen to anecdote experience, kind of what I was talking about before, right? You don't have to know everything under the sun to start coaching, but like you should have a pretty decent foundation. And I think the rest are things that you'll kind of start to realize, like the gaps that you have once you actually do start working with people, right? I mean, like when I first started coaching, truthfully, like I didn't really know what I was doing to like a full extent. Like I had like some personal training certifications, which mean nothing to me now, but like they kind of gave me a foundation, and that's sort of like what got me into at least understanding the basics of how to actually help people. But from there, like you do have to like branch out, right? And I think the best way to do that is work with a coach yourself, work under a mentor, because that experience that you get is going to be invaluable. So that would be my advice to coaches that are looking to get into this space.
Yeah, I love that. And the pursuit of it currently, just trying to be around great coaches as much as I possibly can, because every time I stand around them and you see this skill gap. You see just how far you might think the certification taught you what you need to know. You might think even like schooling taught you what you need to know, but there's all the in-between stuff, the not black and white, but the gray and the vast spectrum of education that goes inside of it. And the coaches who have it mastered down to, they can speak about it. And I loved how whenever Paul spoke about it, how he has his level of knowledge of depth where he could just go like BB gun, 9mm, like rocket launcher across a vast number of things. And I really want to step into being like that coach, and the standard out there is so high.
Yeah, absolutely. And like as soon as you do start diving into like doing a deep dive into some of this stuff, you realize like how vast this really is. Like there's layers to this. There's depth to this for sure. It's like a never ending. Honestly, like it truthfully is. Like it is there's never ending rabbit holes that you can go down with literally every facet of this coaching stuff, which is, it's kind of like the fun part in it, right? Is there's always, there's the learning never stops. There's always something new that you can learn to improve your skill set to provide a better, experience and be able to help more people. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things that it's like, you're never going to stop learning. If you're a good coach and you care about your clients, continuing to invest in yourself, invest in your education, that should be one of those things that, you are constantly doing. Again, otherwise you're going to get left behind.
And to bring it all together, I just want to, again, turn it over to you. What's next for DMH Physiques, in your personal coaching career? Any new projects, areas of expertise you're really bullish on, you're excited about, anything you want to project?
So actually, like one of the big things that I took away from, that event that you and I were both at in Dallas, was the sense of community. I feel like that's like been something that I've always wanted to do, but I wasn't quite sure like what I wanted that to look like. So I've always just been like hesitant about doing something and just kind of like creating that community. And I feel like that's like one of the big areas that I really wanted to focus on this year. So actually, like on the way back from that, I created this like whole community event that I'm going to be doing here in 3 weeks, May 9th. I rented out a suite at a local like professional sports team stadium. And I have like 25 of like my local athletes here that are coming out. I even have a couple that are flying in. Hayden's actually one of them. Hayden's going to be flying in because I coach him. So it's just going to be like a really cool thing. And I'm like super excited about it. We're giving away a bunch of like free stuff. I got like custom brand shaker cups I'm giving away to everybody. We're going to be raffling off some cool prizes and stuff like that. And we're just going to enjoy sports game and just kind of like, again, community, right? I got so many local athletes and they all train at the same gym, but like a lot of them like don't even know each other, which is like crazy to me. And like I want to start like building a community with all like my local athletes and whatnot. So it's sort of like one of the the big things that have been on the radar for me this year. And I'm like, again, this is the first community event that I'm actually hosting. So I'm just really, really excited for it. I been thinking about it since I had that idea planted in my head. I was like, I'm going to do this. So I'm really, really excited. So I got that on the docket coming up. And then it's really just like continuing to build out my team, continuing to, create as much of an impact as I possibly can, which is sort of like, I think that's going to be like a never ending thing, is just like widespread impact, right? Is like, again, why I got into this first place is to help people. And that's still like my goal, right? Is how can I help as many people as I possibly can? So those are really the big things that are on the radar this year. And I have an assistant coach too, Anthony, who I want to bring him up too. He's been working under me for probably close to a year at this point. And I just want to like build up his skills as a coach and just kind of get him to the point where he's super confident in his skill set. So those are really the big things for me and my team. And just want to continue growing, continue having impact, continuing building out this community that I have.
Dude, that's amazing. What a cool step to take in that direction, where you help people, and then the people you help other people, and it's just like a web of just, I guess in my eyes, kind of what people are here to do, which is serve each other as best they can. Very cool stuff. Yeah. If you appreciated everything that he said, please go give Dylan a follow. The link's going to be down in the bio. If this episode added value to you, please share it with somebody who needs to hear it. That's how we keep growing this thing. We'll be back really soon, guys.